Welcome into the OBR streaming network. This is the React. Welcome. My name is Brad Ward. The man next to me is the always fantastic Pete Smith. Good to see you here. Filing into the chat. Make sure you hit like and subscribe on your way in or out. Just make sure those buttons are working down there. We are sounding perfect, Jacob says. Fantastic. Good news there. Training camp begins tomorrow, the eve of training camp. What's going on, Pete Smith? How are you?
I'm good now that we actually get to do football things and not too far away from pads. So linemen actually get to be linemen and all that good stuff. And we get to talk about what I think are probably going to be the most exciting elements of the team this year, which is namely the defensive line.
Yep. Excited about all of that. Excited for camp in general. Let's just start off with some hot topics from today and a couple other things I wanted to hit on. Let's start with the Bengals defensive end Trey Hendrickson, quote unquote, very contentious. Are the talks, says he won't play without a new contract, Pete.
Trey Hendrickson, like, I cannot think of an easier decision than with Trey Hendrickson is to say yes. Like, it blows my mind. And like, if you could build your organization out of Trey Hendrickson, you would. And yet the Bengals are like, I don't know about that price. And it's silly because your quarterback's calling it a distraction. He's the best player on what was a bad defense. And I don't want to overstate it that it's going to derail their season, but like the longer this plays out, it's not only about Trey Hendrickson, it's about all those other guys who are sitting there wondering, where the hell is this thing going? Either you just signed a contract extension like Burrow or the receiver, and you should go, what am I doing? Obviously, I'm going to get paid, but like, how far is this going to go? Or you're somebody who's sitting there looking at this going, God, I hope I can get to the open market when I can get paid, because I don't want to be stuck with the Bengals and negotiating with his ownership group. I want to play for basically any of the 31 other teams because I know I'm going to get more money out of them.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I also wanted to mention their player who is Shamar. What's his name? Shamar
Stewart.
Yeah, he's back playing with his college team, or he's practicing with them, right, to this point?
Just sort of working out with them and taking classes, but yeah.
Yeah. With the idea that, according to Mike Florio in the language and the contracts, that he actually could go back and play in college, but he would still be the Bengals would still have his rights, technically. Like, he wouldn't be able to re-enter the draft, right? Weird situation there. Like, what gets resolved by you going back and playing 1 year in college?
Well, I mean, at that point, you're re-entering the draft next year and trying to go to a new team. Now, Texas A&M's head coach has come out and said, we're not doing this. Like, he's not really playing here. And there's a number of reasons why. One, they've already, obviously that changes how your recruiting is going. You've basically promised all these other players various things. And for Texas A&M in particular, they're paying their roster something like $50 million. That, they're not going to like mess around with that and bring in Shamar Stewart back to sort of upset the apple cart on there. But like, it's sort of, I mean, in some ways it's just Shamar Stewart trying to stay in shape and do that. And then sort of apply a little bit of pressure on the Bengals that he could, stay out of the NFL for a year, re-enter, and then be back in the draft next year. Now, is Shamar Stewart a first-round pick next year? Probably not. The defense, the edge class is very good next year. So, I mean, they want to get this thing worked out and ultimately because they want him to get it paid and everything. But the Bengals, and particularly their owner, Mike Brown, who looks like got 89 years old, just refuses to sort of accept sort of the NFL as it is and how he wants it to be. He's trying to create language and contracts that he can put in perpetuity on on anyone else the Bengals get. And okay, I mean, that's an interesting battle to fight, but like, again, you're 89 years old. Like, what are you really fighting for here? That's where I'm sort of lost on this whole thing. Is like, okay, you can. How many seasons do you have left that you want to mess around and try to prove a point rather than try to field the best possible team? Basically, trying to ensure yourself against Stewart failing, or as Mike Brown put it, and very weirdly put, to basically suggest, well, if Shamar Stewart ends up in jail, I don't want to have to pay him for that. Like, okay, but like, what are you saying about Shamar Stewart? I mean, you picked this guy 18th, whatever. Seemingly you believe he can be successful and you'd like to see him succeed. And everything you're saying now that you've got him, his rights is, well, we're worried about that he's going to fail. So I think that's just a terrible way to operate.
It is. And everything feels very dysfunctional there. I want to ask you this question, sort of, I don't know. Should I feel vindicated at all that Obo Okoronkwo signed with the Eagles? Like, me complaining the Browns got rid of him, should I feel somewhat vindicated that they signed him?
Not necessarily, just because the Eagles are trying to refill their roster from losing some of the guys they lose in free agency for big money contracts. But like, I haven't seen any contract language, but I doubt Okoronkwo is guaranteed anything with Eagles. He might not make that roster when all is said and done. They need a number of players to step up and be successful, like Jalen Hunt. But again, the Eagles are in a different place than where the Browns are. The Eagles are a team that just won the Super Bowl. They're in a position where there's nothing that says they can't contend for another one. So adding a 30-year-old pass rusher could theoretically help, whereas the Browns, aren't necessarily in position to contend for a Super Bowl. And they have some younger players they really need to figure out, more younger players than the Eagles do. So there's very little risk for the Eagles in this. And the Browns seemingly want to get figured out with, beyond Isaiah McGuire, who I think is a lock for the starting job. But, we talk about roles and stuff with this other thing. What is Alex Wright going to be this year? What is Aiden Huntington, if anything? Are they going to be able to get something out of some of these other players that are younger and might have a future? Whereas even if, to sort of your point, if Okoronkwo was the best guy or, the best third or maybe fourth guy, is that necessarily better if he's going to be out of here in a year? Maybe, because obviously there's no certainty with Alex Wright, who's on last year. He's on the last year of his rookie deal, and some of those other guys. I don't have a problem with them getting rid of Okoronkwo. Ultimately, they were never going to pay him the $6 million. That's what it comes down to. And if we'll see what the actual figure is for Okoronkwo with the Eagles, but I'd be very curious to know if that was something Okoronkwo was willing to do, because he may have been perfectly happy to sort of get out there and potentially sign with a contender as he also tries to rebuild his value.
Yeah, it's a good landing spot for him. Certainly they have some players there, but they're not like, as I look at their depth chart, they're not like super solid at edge, are they? I mean, who? Mora Ojima, Jalen Hunt, you said, Azeez Ojulari. They got that Powell Ryland in the draft. What other edges? Ty Robinson. He's not really an edge, is he? He's more of a.
Ty Robinson's a D tackle and somebody I really liked for the Browns, honestly, even though he's old.
Yeah.
No, I mean, what you're looking at for the Eagles is Nolan Smith. You've got Azeez Ojulari is sort of a flyer, not unlike Okoronkwo. That's a lot. I think that's a big person he's going up against. They've got Jalen Hunt. Another guy they signed is sort of a flyer is Josh Uche, Like this is a collection of those type of players where they're just hoping to get one or two of these guys to figure out a role. And yes, they took my guy, Antoine Powell-Ryland, speedy edge out of Virginia Tech as well. So they've got a lot of options for that group. And, they're not as good as short of one of these guys really overperforming, one of these flyers they took really overperformed. They're not going to be as good as they were last year. Last year, they were loaded. They still had Brandon Graham. They still had Josh Hunt or whatever his name is, Sweat, who's now with the Arizona Cardinals. And they still had Nolan Smith and some of these other guys where Nolan Smith was sort of like not extra, but like they didn't need him to be that guy yet. Now they need him to be a dominant, impact type player. But that's position is one where if you're sitting there looking, you're looking forward for the Eagles, like in next year's draft, you could easily pencil in a first round edge rusher and not think twice about it.
Yeah. All right. Drew in Brick City, Njoku's cap hit next year is either 24 million or 14, and he's not under contract next year. Ouch. I don't think it's 24. I can look. But I fully expect an extension for Njoku, don't you?
Certainly makes the most sense to me. I know Jack Duffin has done a projection on what that would look like. It's one of these positions where, again, if somebody can staff his damn legs, he is somebody who could be very good for multiple more seasons because he's just an incredible athlete, has gotten better with time. And there's every incentive for them to want to keep him around. He seems to want to be kept around. So I don't worry too much about that. And this year he's owed $15.25 million in cash. So his cap hit is $11.436 million. So that part is not really a big deal, but certainly if they want to, talk about getting him under contract, for tight ends, early 30s is not a huge deal because the type of guy you're getting is a guy who's just so much of a better athlete than everybody else. They don't necessarily, he does, even though he's had an annoying history with injuries, it's not surgical, just seems to end up with high ankle sprains every year. But like in terms of what he necessarily brings to the table and everything, it would not shock me at all if the Browns want to get it done. He wants to get it done, and they iron that thing out at some point during, perhaps right before the start of the season or some point during the year.
Yeah, it makes sense. I can't imagine the Browns wanting to move on from him in any way. He's just such a critical part of their offense, and he's still in his prime, right? So I think you still have more prime years of Njoku to enjoy if you want to extend him. And so I think he's worth the money.
And the only thing that would change the dynamic potentially is honestly a change of leadership in the organization, because Kevin Stfansky values that position highly. They did not pick Harold Fannin to play that position. He's not an inline Y type tight end. Njoku can do all that stuff. Fannin's more of an F. So if you were to say, oh, we're going to, move on, I don't even know what the hell that would look like. You're not just going to say, hey, David Njoku, go ahead and walk. You then would have to replace a significant offensive position for, even if it's another head coach, they would still have to address that position. But particularly for Kevin Stfansky, he's a critical piece. And, maybe if Dustin Hopkins can't get it squared away, that they can have Njoku kick, since he is boasted about his ability to do that.
Yes, absolutely. He does. All right, you're watching the OBR streaming network. We're going to get to our first video. Last night I stumbled upon this. We don't have to watch it forever, but interestingly enough, Judy making an appearance on Nightcap with Shannon Sharp and Chad Ochocinco. Which I guess Judy has spent some time at Ocho's, I guess you call him Chad Ocho. What do you call him these days? I don't know. Chad's camps, wide receiver camps or something to that effect. But yeah, here we are with Jerry Judy making an appearance on Nightcap, of all places. That he handled himself really well.
There we go.
Oh, there you go. Oh, okay. Hey, with no further ado, let's welcome Jerry Judy, former #1 draft pick of the Denver Broncos, a former Biletnikoff Award winner, former national champion with the Alabama the Roll Tide.
Yes, sir.
Here he is. Jerry, you were one of the guys that attended the wide receiver workshop. Obviously, it was down in your neck of the woods, South Florida. Why was it important for you to attend this shop?
You know, it's always great to be able to be around a great group of guys that at the top of their position. I grew up watching Chad, so it was a very special moment for me just to be able to be out there and learn from him and all the other guys that was out there.
NFL ranked you number 82, the 82nd best player in the NFL after the 24th season.
Were you surprised that he jumped to, not that the top 100 matters, but were you surprised that he jumped into the top 100 this year?
Well, let me first say that list is garbage, but no, I do think he warrants it but I hate that list because if you understand how they do it, or at least how they've done it, they will come to these guys like right after practice and have them fill out like these ranking sheets. And it's just basically they're tired, and two, then they just fill in all their buddies. Or, maybe they'll pick another guy. It's just a very unscientific way of sort of voting this thing. But no, I mean, I've said it before, I think Jerry Jeudy was better having had time to sort of digest what he did last year than on the initial watch, because you got a small taste week 2 against the Jaguars, but like him and Deshaun Watson was not good. Deshaun Watson couldn't really find him. And then like Jameis Winston is not, by any stretch a great quarterback, but he gives his guys chances to make plays.
Yeah.
And they took off. And then, at the end of the season, you got DTR in there, and DTR is what he is on a team that was just so bad. And yet Jerry Jeudy still just finds ways to get open, make plays, and just such an explosive threat. Like, I remember people like arguing when the Browns got him that Jerry Jeudy wasn't fast, or that he wasn't an explosive threat, and he's just so dangerous with the ball in his hands and the amount of explosive. He's just instant offense. He was great. You get the games like the Saints where he makes the big explosive plays, or the Denver Broncos where he makes the big explosive plays. But then like you get the Blizzard game where he was tremendous in that game, and it's dirty work catches. It's doing the hard stuff. And the Browns' history of multiple yard seasons from receivers is horrible. He has a chance to do that. And, stranger things have happened. He could get hurt and all these other things, but you'd like to think with another year in the offense, both he more comfortable with Kevin Stfansky, and particularly Kevin Stfansky more comfortable with how he wants to use him, that even if the numbers aren't like, you're not going to say, oh, he went from a 1,200 yard receiver. Well, he's going to be better, so now he should be a 1,500 yard receiver. But you'd like to hope that that they get him more involved in ways that are going to maximize him. Obviously the other factor now to sort of consider with this is defenses are going to be on him in a way that they weren't last year. And obviously as you get going through the season, you sort of figure out he's the guy, even though Denver did not. And, hopefully that is going to benefit the rest of the offense, where now we'll see if they can run the ball better. We'll see if they can have health from some of these other guys. Like, and Jerry Jeudy has this great season. David Njoku was largely invisible for so much of it because he was either out or dealing with the ankle, that he's going to have more play. If Cedric Tillman is healthy, that that stretch we saw becomes bigger and more pronounced and becomes legitimate. And we're not sitting here going, well, maybe Cedric Tillman good, and now he's just a real cog. And if it's Jamari Thrash or Cade McDonald or Keyshawn Johnson or Brad Ward, getting somebody else that can sort of find a niche in that receiver position, or if it's Harold Fannin, I've said before, and I continue to believe Harold Fannin is going to get every opportunity to be a huge factor on offense. As long as he can do it from digesting the offense and the physicality component, they're going to find ways to use him constantly. And then, if it's running backs, if it's Dylan Sampson as a space player, if it's some other weird creativity, Judy has proven that he's a real number one receiver, and that is going to should make the rest of the offense better. And obviously, you sit here and we go back to last year, and you sit there and wish, man, if you could get that Jerry Judy with the previous 2 years of Amari Cooper, how good this can be. And now the search is, can we find another guy to pair with them to keep going? But there are a lot of things that scare the crap out of me with this team. Jerry Judy is not one of them. I think he's legitimately good. The marriage with the Browns was perfect for reasons that go beyond just skill set. And he's preached this on every place he's gone, and how much he loves what the Browns did for him in terms of believing in him and all these other things, and how bad he wants to succeed. And I think that's sort of illustrated by the fact that he is a grinder in the sense that he's not satisfied. He wants to do this type of stuff to try to get better. He's always been that dude. He's talking about how he looked up to Chad Johnson. I don't know if he did or not, but certainly he did for Amari Cooper and some of these other receivers. I don't get the sense that he's just content with the contract and one good season. I think he's hungry and wants to keep going, and hopefully the Browns have a quarterback that can allow him to do that.
Yeah, which they're actually going to get to a lot of that here in a minute. So
you were not even ranked prior to that. What should Cleveland expect this year? 82. So clearly you see that like 82. Nah, I'm trying to get on down there. I'm trying to get down to the 50s. I'm trying to get to the 30s. I'm trying to get to the 20s. I'm trying to be, when they talk about the 5 best receivers, when they talk about the 10 best receivers, I needed them to talk about you.
Yeah, for sure. That's my goal. I want to be at the top of my position. I'm just keep grinding and stay focused and continue to work on my craft and work to be better than I was the year prior. And I'm still chase that each and every day and every year.
Well, let me ask you this. Look, when you came out in the draft, I said he's the best guy in the draft. And you were in the draft with Jefferson and you were in the draft with CeeDee Lamb. So I'm not going to do hindsight. And those guys are having phenomenal seasons. Why do you think the main reason it didn't work for you? And I think I know the reason why, but I want to hear you say it. I want to hear what you have to say. Why weren't you able to replicate in Denver what you're currently doing in Cleveland?
One, I think, just consistency just throughout the whole offense, and just a lot of moving pieces and a lot of stuff that I had to deal with when it comes to playing football, such as injuries, different quarterbacks each in every game, different coaching staff, so that's something that could really affect a wide receiver and his, but now that I got the opportunity to really, had a healthy season, being able to be that number one receiver, be that number one option, and be able to get put into a great position to be able to perform the way I've done, that's all the receiver could ask for real.
Yeah, I like it. I already know the type of season you're going to have. You're going to build off what you did last year. And it all comes down to being not only consistent, but when you are consistent, consistency brings confidence. And based on where you're from, you already know what happens when we feeling confident and it's time to play football. So I'm excited for you. I'm excited for what you guys are going to do with Joe Flacco and Shador, Gabriel, whoever's at the helm. To me, knowing what you can do at the receiver position, you make everyone else's job around you easy. I said that to you in person. I said it to you, before in general. So this season coming up, are there any goals that you've already set? Long-term, short-term, whatever it may be, numbers-wise. You don't have to say anything specific. I just want to know what goals you have this upcoming season for you individually.
Honestly, one of my biggest goals for it is just having a winning season. You know, that's something that I haven't really done since entering the league. You know, never reached the playoffs. You know, that's one of my biggest goals. So having a winning season and be able to reach the playoff, that's something I'm truly working hard towards, and just being better than I was last year. You know, I had a great season last year, finished 6th in receiving yards, and now I'm still trying to chase that number 1 spot, and you know, and I ain't gonna stop till I get there.
Right answer. Correct.
Well, he's taking the high road on a lot of this stuff.
Yep.
Smartly. I don't think he certainly doesn't want to look, he said everything he needed to do the Denver Broncos against the Denver Broncos. Like,
yep.
He wins from that standpoint. So there's no sense revisiting that. You know, we'll see how realistic it is to get the winning season part. You know, I think for Jerry Jeudy, so much of what he's trying to do, I don't know if he addressed it or not. Like, Jerry Jeudy is trying to be a good teammate guy. If you've seen the clips they release of him in training camp and mic'd up, it's very clear what he's trying to do in terms of being a bigger voice, trying to be more of a leader, those type of things, which I think is important for him. And certainly the contract, you know, we complain that Myles Garrett is not a leader.
Yep.
And we demand that because of the contract he gets, that he needs to be. Jerry Jeudy is seemingly doing everything he can to sort of take the responsibility of the contract and pay it forward, and on an offense that right now could use leadership. You know, that wide receiver room could use leadership. So that gives him a big opportunity to sort of help himself there. But I think that's the other part that's going to help him, because, you know, again, with quarterback being a question mark, you know, he got frustrated early last year, understandably. And there was a sense of, here we go again, in terms of, you know, some of the struggles he's had with the Denver Broncos, because some of that is, yes, the Denver Broncos in many ways screwed him. But he also did not handle those situations as well as he could. I think he's desperately trying to make sure that he doesn't fall into that trap now. And obviously, you know, if he were to do that with the contract he has, it's, you know, people are going to get after him in a big way. So he's seemingly doing everything he can to be positive from that end and trying to help everybody else out.
In 9 weeks of 4 at quarterback, he was tested big time as far as could have gone in the tank, right? And we saw flashes, like, to your point, right? The helmet throw, whatever, you know, but he never went all the way in the tank, and he stayed ready. And so I think, you know, he deserves some credit for that, because that was, you know, that couldn't have been easy.
Yeah, and Jameis Winston gets a lot of credit for that as well, because he was the guy that sort of got in Jerry Jeudy's corner very quickly. And ultimately, that is also one of the reasons that Jameis Winston isn't here. It's not because he built up, you know, Jerry Jeudy. That's certainly good. It's this weird dynamic where, like, he would be great with some guys and not great with others. Yeah. And they wanted a little bit more certainty from that angle. But you know, Jameis Winston, whatever you want to say about him, one of the things he only here for the 1 year. One of the things he did really, really well was he made sure that Jerry Jeudy stayed engaged. And when he finally got on the field, he got him the ball, and Jerry Jeudy paid it off handsomely. You know, it's weird that he ended up number 6 in receiving yards, just the way that season went when you endure Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
And then you just absolutely crush it for, you know, basically a couple months, and just fly up the rankings with big games against the Saints, against the Broncos, and some of these other teams that he doesn't, you know, look, certainly if they want to come out and he wants to rack up 250 yards against the Bengals, I'm not going to be too upset about it. But hopefully we're getting more of a situation where, you know, we're just getting like 6 100-yard games or something, as opposed to feast or famine, because quarterback is ultimately going to limit him in sort of this respect. But there's a world where Jerry Jeudy could end up being the second best receiver in this division. He's never going to catch Jamar Chase, but DK Metcalf Jerry Judy's better than DK Metcalf right this second. And, the Ravens have talent, but I think Jerry Judy's better than those guys right now, or at least coming off this year. So if he can carry that forward and be consistent, the Browns could have the second best receiver in the division because, maybe third, maybe the Bengals end up at the top 2 again with T. Higgins. But number 3 would be pretty good. If he can get to 2, that would be great.
Yeah.
I like that.
Drew, you mentioned like when you're in Denver, there are a lot of moving parts. A lot of the quarterbacks in and out. You had a lot of offense schemes. Now it might be a similar situation. You got Joe Flacco, who's the veteran. You got Kenny Pickett. They drafted Dylan Gabriel. They drafted Shedeur Sanders. Has anybody stood out to you that's like, okay, this might be my quarterback. I might be starting with him. Have you noticed anything? Has anybody stood out to you?
I feel like we got the biggest thing that, I'm thankful for is just having four great quarterbacks, that's go out there and compete every day. That been doing their thing.
Come on with that.
They been doing their thing, man. Yeah. I'm telling you what it is, man. We got 4 great quarterbacks, man. They all been doing their thing for real. So, I'm just, my job is to make it easy. Whoever at the helm, I'm just going to get open for him and, do my thing for real. I don't got no control over that, man. Whoever the coaching staff choose and whoever they pick to be the quarterback, I'm just make their job easier when they throw me the ball.
I want to know. Hold on.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna let you go right now. I got to sneak this in there because I love this young bull. I love him. Watching him play, he's a technician. What is it like going against goddamn Denzel Ward? That's what I want to know. Because that boy can play. He can play some ball, man, off. It don't matter what it is, man. He nasty with it.
This is a great DB. He's one of the few guys that really know how to be patient without using his hands, be in front of you without using his hands. So, that's one thing that really separates Denzel from his skill set. A lot of guys that don't use their hand really kind of struggles. So he got good feet, great awareness when the ball's in the air, and he's a scrappy dude for sure. He's a real ball player.
I like Dan.
Look, obviously you mentioned that you dealt with some injuries. You dealt with the quarterback play was not up to par when you were in Denver. You had a lot of different schemes. And Steve Smith Jr., who's a friend of the show, you and him had some words back and forth. Have you guys been able to work out your differences behind the scene? Honestly,
nah, man, I ain't. It is what it is, man. I ain't really too stressed about that. It's old news, he's things in the past, man. I said some things in the past, but my goal is always to prove I know who I am at the end of the day, and I proved it last year to so I ain't really focused on none of that, man. That's old news to me for real.
When I watch you at Alabama, obviously there are a bunch of talented guys. You win the Biletnikoff Award in your sophomore season. You win a national championship. I think you caught the game-winning touchdown. The game. I think you got the lead against the SEC championship against Georgia. I think Jalen Hurts came in and threw you the ball and you made the catch.
That was 2018, I think. Yeah.
And so I'm looking at you, Jew, and I'm like, man, technically sound can run. And so, but for me, sometimes I'm like, damn, Jew, you try to do too much, man. Just shake the man and go on about your business. You ain't got to shake him 3 times. You already done made him look bad. Just go ahead, just the one time, just poop on him one time and go on about your business. Do you have? There's a clock that got to go off. Whether you're running an out, you're running an in, you're running a comeback, you're running a hook, it don't matter. There's a clock. When you go out there and let's say Denzel Ward, you had great competition in college because you had Pat Surtain, you had to deal with him in college, and I'd be damn if he didn't come join you in Denver. So you got an opportunity to work with one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. So, Drew, when you going out there and somebody lines up across to you and you have a certain route, tell me what's going. Tell our listeners and our viewers what's going through your mind.
First, I just gotta gotta know the play, know where I'm at on the field, first. Then once I line up, I look at the safety, see where the coverage at, look at the safety. Then I look at the leverage of the DB in front of me, depending on my route. Then I just think about the technique of how I'm gonna run this route, depending on if it's a slant and he outside leverages. Am I going to spray him and attack his leverage and make him think I want to go outside and get underneath, or if he inside of me, if I'm going to space it, or I'm gonna just quick jab me and take it in. There's a lot of different things that just go through my mind. If those don't work, it's reaction after that.
Mm-hmm. Hey, how much freedom, Jude, now that you've had a great season last year? Most of the time when you have offensive coordinators, they call plays or they have plays that they call, they want their schemes run exactly how they're drawn up on paper. How much freedom are you allowed to do things your way, just a little bit? Like, obviously, when you have a certain route, you're supposed to be +2. Do they let you cheat the split a little bit just to throw the DB off so he doesn't know what's coming? Because most of the time, it's all about reading and understanding based on what you see and watching film. And most of the time, everybody just lines up in the same spot. The only thing that throws things off is the formations are different. Do they give you a little freedom to change your splits and play with things a little bit now that you know the offense?
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons I had success in Cleveland. Just they let me out there and let me be free. They know that I understand the game pretty well. They know I know how to beat leverages. I know what they want in the offense, know where they want me to get to. Right. And I feel like that would cause me to have success, So Coach Stfansky and the coaching staff did a great job of just allowing me to play my game, and just be able to win on every route they want me to run. They know I know how to run every route in the route tree, and they know I could get open. So they allow me to do that.
That's loud.
Thoughts on that? Interesting. Him talking about Stfansky giving him freedom. I thought, heck, he might as well have taken a PR training course before this interview. He answered every question perfectly about the quarterbacks, everything. I thought he handled it really well. So, and to your point, he does sound focused, right? And I thought it was impressive interview, actually.
I mean, for all intents and purposes, the Cleveland Browns changed his life. He was sort of languishing in Denver. It was not good from either side. He gets the Browns add him and immediately guarantee him $53 million or whatever it was. That's a lot of faith to put in him. And then he paid it off. And, when you give that much money to a guy, as God knows the Browns did with Deshaun Watson, you're giving them a certain amount of power with that. So if you're the Browns and you're saying, we think Jerry Jeudy is this good, there's no sense in sort of handcuffing him at that point. Let him sort of find the best way to be effective. Now, there's obviously rules within that. Like at some point, he's not helping your offense if he's just completely free. But you want guys, one, to do what you're coaching them to do. But then in addition to that, Kevin Stefanski is a big guy, big advocate of empowering his players.
Yeah.
That's, for whatever you want to say about them, this is one of the reasons Kevin Stefanski, gets a lot of support from his guys. The Browns let their guys sort of own their contributions to the team. So you're listening to a guy who's owning it and saying, I have the freedom to do this, which, on some level is freedom, and you're sort of giving control over the player. But the other element of that is you're giving them responsibility. You are putting it on them. So if they screw it up, doing it their way. And this was the same thing when like Amari Cooper would come over after play and say, I'm seeing this, call this. And Kevin Stefanski would do it. Like, yeah, there's a certain element of that where you're sitting there going, man, why is he letting players call plays? But like when you do it in the way he's done it, like it's not just throwing stuff against the wall and saying, trying to get me the ball. Like with Amari Cooper, one, he was good at it, but it came off as a responsibility and a trust that he felt like this was his opportunity to help the team, and he didn't want to blow that. I think Jerry Jeudy has the same mindset with how he plays the game and his approach at wide receiver. And, we want a coach that's going to play to the strengths of his players. And some of that might be letting the player tell you what his strengths are. And that's clearly the case with Jerry Jeudy, and it worked great. And you're hoping it can carry over into this next year.
You're watching the React on the OBR streaming network. So we got some news, Pete, released by the Browns. A couple people in the chat upset about some of the news, but I don't think it's as big a deal as you guys are reacting as far as Mike Hall goes. We'll address it right now. So the Browns have made the following transactions. Jalen Gill waived non-football injury. David Bell placed on the NFI list.
Mm-hmm.
And Mike Hall Jr. and Deshaun Watson placed on the PUP list. All players remain on the active roster and are eligible to be activated upon passing a physical.
Mm-hmm.
All this means, right? I'm going to confirm this with you. All this means, as far as Mike Hall goes, is that he's just not ready tomorrow. But when he is ready, they can activate him.
Or they might activate him tomorrow. I mean, the bottom line is, like, whenever they feel he's ready, they can activate him and he's ready to go. There's no intake process for it. Once he's passed, and largely my understanding with Paul is he's basically healthy. It's just making sure that his knee and everything is as strong as possible and that he's ready to hit the ground running in a way. He's not trying to like rehab in practices that's going to potentially put him at risk. They want him to be strong. They want him to be confident. They want him to be fully confident in what he's doing. His knee injury is the surgically repaired MCL from last year that he suffered the season and the season finale. So he's working back to get from that. This is something that was known, timeline unclear. I'm not hugely worried about Hall being on the field until they have pads on anyway. But like, it's not a huge deal because the second they feel he's ready to go and according to, Lane and the work he's done, they feel really good about the work he's been doing, that he's going to be ready to go. So no, the PUP list is not a huge deal from his standpoint. The PUP list is a much bigger deal from Deshaun Watson's standpoint because his physically unable to perform status is probably going to go into indefinitely. In other words, I think he's got a better chance of getting a shovel and working on building the stadium than he does ever playing for this team again. I think that's largely a formality to make sure he never comes back. But whatever, Mary Kay will come out and make a report that, oh man, he's going to be back in October, and then come back and go, well, he's not really coming back. And this is me breaking news. He's never coming back. That part is largely ceremonial at this point. The only thing, and the other part about that sort of matters from that standpoint is they do count against the 90-man roster. So it's not like they're putting, Hall and Watson on the PUP list and then getting the benefit of being able to sign more guys. However, Jalen Gill does. So that means they have one roster spot to use. I imagine they have somebody lined up and ready to sign tomorrow, but we'll see. I'm very curious to see if my guess, if I had to guess right now, that player is going to be somebody who can snap, because that was my expectation all along. And I thought they were going to want to get one more guy who could come in and be a center. But we'll see if there's something else they like. But everything else is fine. The only one I don't have a whole lot of clarity on is David Bell. I don't, with his whole hip injury from last year and then saying non-football injury, I don't know what his deal is, but hopefully he's back sooner than later, because they need to get squared away on deciding what they want to do with him. He looked good last year and then suffered what was a major hip injury. I have no idea if he's going to be able to come back in a meaningful way or not, or if he's going to sort of get passed by. But that's sort of where we're at with him.
This stuff with Mike Hall is not surprising, with the injury and surgery that he suffered. They had mentioned that he would be back around camp, so I think he could come back any day. Hopefully. But him going on the PUP list is not by any way or stretch of the imagination detrimental in any way. So
this was the expected course of action. It's just the only question is how long it's going to take. So I if you have nightmares from last year and you're sitting there going, oh man, it's gonna be like Jed Wills. I can confirm that Mike Hall has actually done real work, where Jed Wills is largely, never did, at least from that rehab.
Taking
the Jack Conklin situation was always going to take longer, as was DeJuan Jones, unfortunately. I don't think it's anything near that, but, until he's on the field and going again, it's hard to say. I think he's much closer than those guys were. I don't think it'll be a huge wait, and then he'll be up and going, and then they'll have what should be a very, very good competitive field at defensive tackle.
I don't get why Bell is a non-football injury. Wouldn't he be on the PUP if it was his hip still?
That's what I'm not sure about. Did something else happen?
Yeah.
Or is it some weird? I gotta think it's something else. I don't.
Yeah.
That's one of those things where there's some weird rules with the non-football injury list, but it shouldn't apply to him. If you suffered an injury in college and you're still dealing with it, you'd be non-football injury, but he's not. He obviously sustained that injury for the Browns last year. So whether he had a complication or there's something else nagging him as well, maybe we'll get some clarity on that when Kevin Stfansky speaks to the media when they open up camp.
Yeah. If you recall, he started off tremendously last year before the injury. Well, made a bunch of catches right at the beginning of the year. So
he just got open and caught the ball.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Bell. I was hoping he would compete for that wide receiver 5 spot, but we'll have to wait and see on that now. This complicates things. Yeah. All right. Let's go on to our next video here. This is 92.3 The Fan. This is the afternoon drive show with Nathan Segura talking about training camp, of course, with Segura.
Browns analyst. You know him as an all-around swell dude, occasional part-time professional wrestler. Although I'm sure he's all the way in, even when he's part-time. The great Nathan Segura joins us now. What's up, buddy?
Not too much, guys. How you doing?
Doing living the dream here, getting ready for football, and it's interesting, man. It's going to be such an interesting season. But whether I think they're going to be great or not, I'm still all the way in and kind of super excited to see where this thing goes.
Yeah, it's going to be a very newsy training camp. I think, obviously, whenever you have a quarterback competition, it's going to be newsy, and we'll see how ultimately that plays out for the Cleveland Browns. It's a very tough start to this season, and it's an interesting one because you still have so many really good pieces in place. I think the defensive front seven is going to be excellent. I like our cornerback room. I know the Browns are high on Ronnie Hickman, so defensively, I think this could be, an elite defense once again. And then offensively, you've got some real stars. We got some question marks. Obviously, the biggest at quarterback, who that's going to be. But it's going to be, I think, kind of a fascinating season in terms of, you're trying to get information about your young quarterbacks. At the same time, obviously, you're trying to win games, and you've got a lot of talent to do so. I think it's going to be very interesting. It's going to be an interesting training camp. It's going to be kind of, as I said, as newsy and as scrutinized the training camp as we've had in a long time.
Nathan, one of the things that's been talked about, I kind of remember you talking about this, is they did this in mini camps where they ran a little bit more of a robust practice than usual, trying to get all the quarterbacks the touches they need. Do you think that's it? Should we expect larger practices to carry over, not just to start camp, but throughout camp?
Yeah, I think so. I think you look at the Browns, and I think, Kevin Stefanski would be the first to tell you a lot of the things that they did last year in terms of how they used the time. Obviously, there wasn't the quarterback competition, number one, but number two, was with a focus on player health. And then they had one of the most oft-injured seasons in the NFL. So I think that it's difficult to have success in any regard as it relates to injury. So he said, you know what? I think we're going to have longer practices. I think we're going to have more physical practices. I think you are going to see a different kind of training camp from the Cleveland Browns, not just because of the quarterback situation, but also because, you've got to come out ready to play AFC North football, Bengals, Ravens right out of the gate, and then the NFC North, Packers, Lions, Vikings, and then Steelers. I mean, your first 6 games are against teams that all won 10 or more games a year ago, and so you've got to be ready to go immediately. And so I think we're going to see a ratchet up intensity. You got to be.
All right, I got to push back a little bit on some of this. This whole idea that, listen, I know they're going to practice with more tempo, and they have to do that and waste little time and be efficient when they're on the field because of the quarterback reps and just in general because of the way they want to practice. But Stfansky, and I know they hired a bunch of new guys in that division, right? Like they hired a bunch of new staff in the training and right department. But I don't see them being more physical necessarily in practice. I don't see them doing like what the Steelers do, or tackling to the ground, or, ratcheting up the intensity. It's just not in. Like, I've just heard Stfansky too many times behind the podium talk about being healthy and getting to week 1 and taking care of each other. And the only that those situations are for controlled environments like joint practices. Like, I've just heard him say that year after year after year. I can't imagine that all of a sudden this year they're going to start tackling to the ground and be more physical in practice and whatnot.
I don't think being physical and tackling to the ground are necessarily connected. I think you can have really physical. I know, but just let me clarify, because I think you can have a very physical practice and not tackle to the ground. I hope that's the approach. I do think they're going to be way more physical this year. One, I think that's the brand of, I think they have to, because that's the brand of football they're trying to play this year. They want a tough, hard-nosed defense that just. But
it was in 23 too.
Yes, but that was
they were at the Greenbrier.
Older defense in some ways. I think they want to ramp that element up. They've got whenever he's activated Mike Hall, they've got Juwan Briggs, Isaiah McGuire, they've got Mason Graham. They've got all these guys, and particularly for a guy like Graham, just use it as an example, and Hall, who's coming back from the injury, and I think that's why they're going to be patient with him and wait to sort of unleash him until he's very confident. I think they want those guys ready to go. I think they want to throw a lot at Mason Graham and get him ready to go. But beyond the defense, I think that's one component, because I think in order for the Browns to be successful, a successful season is going to have them steal the Steelers' identity. Straight up. They are going to be that type of team. Now, I do think that, yes, they want to be more physical on offense. I'm curious to see how that truly translates. They have more veterans on the line. That helps. But I think DeJuan Jones is going to get worked in terms of not only his conditioning and all that stuff, but they want him to really get after it and get better. With Zach Zinter and some of these other, Luke Whippler, some of these other guys, I think they're going to want to get those guys a lot of work. But they have to be able to play a more physical brand of football. They have to be able to run the ball. They cannot operate the way they have. And the concern, obviously, is that if they come up, next week we're talking about, well, Joe Bitonio is out with an ankle, or Wyatt Teller's pulled something or whatever, and then you run the risk of sort of putting yourself into that shell again and not practicing because you're worried about guys getting hit. Physical, they have to be smart with it and figure out a way to get that balance, because they don't want to kill these guys in a way that's going to sort of actually take them off the field. But they have to be able to get these guys ready for the exact reasons Segura mentioned. 6 10-win teams in a row, or 10 teams in a row right off the rip. they cannot be. If they're going to win those games outside of the Bengals situation, reason I have to believe that they can win that game for different reasons. But if they are going to beat the Bengals, it's because they're going to kick their ass up front. They're going to beat the hell out of that defense. But just to compete with these other teams, the Ravens, the Steelers, the AFC, the NFC North teams like Detroit, it's going to require them to be hard ass, play to the whistle, speedy, and to your point, it's going to be a lot like what 2023 was, but for whatever reason, they feel like, for reasons I think are reasonable, they have to find a way to get there. But I think a lot of this is for the offense. They've got a lot of young guys that they want. Obviously, the Quinshon Judkins situation being what it is, that's going to change the dynamic a little bit because your rookie running back who's going to step in right away, is questionable at this point. But whether it's Harold Fannon's going to get a million reps. You're going to see, I suspect Dylan Sampson's going to get a ton of reps, even though I still continue to believe it's going to be more than just that running back. They've got to get those guys up and running because they can't. And as much as you'd like to be able to sort of ease those guys in, I don't think you can afford to sort of slow play the rookies in a way. Not to say that they're going to put them in before they deserve it, but I think they're trying to speed up the process to get them ready to go to be able to contribute immediately so that they can help you in the first half of the season. Because I think the Browns are looking at this and going, if we're 0-4, the season's already over. Like, they have to be able to find a way to compete. And the way they're going to do it with what they have is being tougher and meaner than the other teams they play in the division. There's only way that, Kevin Stefanski's whole thing, earn toughness. I mean, if they come out after all this bluster, including Zagura, and then they come out and they're soft in practice and how they play, that's going to be ugly. They have made a commitment. I think the hiring of Mike Bloomgren is a big part of that. That Stanford mentality. I think they're going to push those guys a lot. So, again, tackling the ground, outside of a few, periods where, whether it's like a 5-minute period or whatever, you're tackling the ground in a given practice. Controlled practice in the same way that you do joint practices to try to keep guys off of each other's legs and all that stuff to try to avoid that crap. But tough, physical, demanding in a way that I in some ways they could not be last year because of the injury situation. But they've got to have that if they're going to get there, or they're going to be staring up at an ugly record very quickly, and we're already going to be talking about playing out the string, and they just cannot afford to be that way.
I guess my question is, I'll point to 23 or 20 again, or even just any previous year that Stfansky has been here. Aren't there teams that create an identity of toughness, implement it on the field, but are still very careful in their preseason, in their usage, in their all of that stuff, like starters not playing? It's you know what I mean? Like,
to be clear,
week one healthy. I guess I think there's a way to implement that without ratcheting it up, like the physical nature of with rookies is one thing. Like, yeah, you're going to run the rookies to death. You're going to try to get them ready to go. Like, the younger players is one thing, but this isn't a super young team across the board. You've got a lot of veteran guys. They're going to get days off and stuff like that, I think. I don't know.
Well, listen, I subscribe to the Rams model. The Rams get after it in practice. They do not mess around in preseason. I don't think the Browns should either. I don't want to see a single starter in preseason games. And the way the Browns have scheduled joint practices, I don't think they can afford to. And I've said all along,
agreed.
The second Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco are taking preseason's reps, we're wasting our time.
Yeah.
And I'll go to Kenny Pickett, 158.3 preseason rating, completely meaningless. Those games should be Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel. All 3 games. Split the reps. Halves, whatever you want to do, I don't care. Those should be for young guys and development. But that is why you have to get more done in practice. That is where you're talking about more physical, longer practices. That's where that work gets done. So you don't waste your time in preseason, and that's where you can get a break. That's where you can get the rest because you have been better in practice. You have set the tone in practice. Andy Reid, he's a guy who runs tough practices and then plays their guys in preseason, and they lose Hollywood Brown for 10 weeks or whatever with the shoulder, or the Steelers play hard practices and then put their starters in, and then they lose a guy or whatever. That part of it is a waste to me. But get work and practice. Get after those guys. If it's a 2-hour practice, they got to go hard for 2 hours, and then I don't care. I don't need to see them in preseason. I know fans are sitting there, oh man, I want to see so-and-so, but like it never fails every year. The second somebody suddenly pulls up or whatever, everybody goes, get all the starters off the field. Skip that crap. It's, I get it, but embrace that the young guys need that work. Give them the opportunity. And thankfully they have 2 rookie quarterbacks that should be able to get people capture the imagination from that standpoint. But just it's all about how you handle practice. That part, I cannot hate the approach of putting starters in preseason anymore.
Okay.
The fact that they were so bad with their status on Deshaun Watson, they were so worried about him that they forced him out for that preseason game because he looked like crap, was not a good sign at all. That should have been a big warning sign for the season already. Let's practice, make it happen, stay the hell out of preseason.
Yeah. So we're on the same page there, right? Like, I mean, if you're competing for a job, that's one thing. Younger players, right? But solidified starters, they shouldn't be playing, right?
Waste of time. Yeah. Listen, it's so stupid because you're like, let's get him out there for 9 snaps. You go through all these warmups, you go through all this other crap, and I get it. There's this element of, well, we want to simulate what it's at halftime and all this other crap. Spare me. Just get the work done in practice. Don't put these guys in preseason where now they're going to the ground and then something stupid happens and Denzel Ward gets a concussion, which was one of the dumbest things of the Stfansky era.
Yes.
Get your young guys in there, get them in the experience, get them under the lights, get them, get all that stuff, coach those guys up, see what they can do. That's a great opportunity to get a ton of reps for young guys, and see if they can't grow up a little bit, in those games.
But I guess my point kind of was, and I'll take what you're saying about the practice, and I hope that they do that safely. But I think the forging your identity and really being more physical than the other team, it has to take place in your joint practices and it could kind of a controlled atmosphere. Those are massive, right? Those 3 days.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you. I think you're right, but I think that is, you set the tone with how you handle up to that point.
Okay.
But I think the Carolina and then the Eagles thing, that should be a very clear benchmark, sort of a measuring stick. How tough are we? We should know right then. You're getting Carolina. We'll see how good they are this year, but you're getting the defending Super Bowl champions. That's going to be a very clear test. Are we physical enough? Can we set the tone with our defense? Can we move? Can we really run the ball? Or are we sitting there lying to ourselves and thinking we're going to figure this out somehow during the season? That's why those practices are so important. And because you have the joint practices, which is why one of the reasons I like joint practices is, one, other than media, nobody gets to see them really. So you're not giving anything in terms of, trade secrets, and you're getting a little bit more of a game planning element of you're trying to really work what you're trying to do for the season. And then 2, because you did joint practices, you're not going to put you shouldn't have any interest in putting your starters out there. You got the real work there. Yeah. Now you let the preseason games be for the young guys.
Agreed.
You've got to bring it in the AFC North. It's a physical brand of football, and the Browns, I think, are going to try to do that. Now, of course, that comes with some injury risk, but as I pointed out before, when they were trying to really have an eye towards minimizing those things that are bitten by the injury bug anyway. So I think they're going to try to get this team hardened, get this team calloused, get this team ready, and then, as you pointed out, get as many reps in as possible so that you can really evaluate these quarterbacks. And when you're ready to make a starter, have a large amount of information that tells you, yeah, this is the direction we're going.
Nathan, there's a report over the weekend from Judy Bautista, and she said that they want somebody, the Browns, that is, to be able to run the offense, minimize mistakes, make good decisions. When you hear that, do you think to yourself that maybe the Browns are trying to swerve away from what they did last year where they led the league in interceptions and are really going to focus on someone that can,
of course.
Yeah, really focus on somebody, though, that isn't, I'm not going to call him a game manager, but, minimize the mistakes and not turn the ball over?
No, that's how you win in the NFL, is not giving the football away and being, positive in the plus minus and the takeaways. And the Browns have not done that well enough, and they've shot themselves in the foot quite a bit. So, of course, that's going to be critically important. And I think you look at a guy like Kenny Pickett, who's taking care of the football for his career, and then you look at both Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, both in college, did a great job taking care of the football. So, yeah, that is critically important. When you're running, kind of this style of offense, the marriage of the run and pass, I think you're going to get back to a lot more 12 personnel. I think you're going to have a lot more run game and play action and the things that are what I would call Kevin Stfansky staples, or, you think of Shanahan, Kubiak style offenses and all their variations, whether it be with McVay, whether it be with LaFleur in Green Bay, whether it be with Kyle, obviously, in San Francisco, Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota. You want a quarterback who's going to take care of the football because the offensive scheme is so good that it is going to provide opportunities for you to move the chains and also to hit shot plays. That's just the way that these offenses are built. So if you have somebody who's able to take care of the ball, make the plays when they present themselves, you're going to be in a much better spot. And then we talked about how good the Browns defense is. So, yeah, I think that that's exactly what anybody wants at the quarterback position. Maybe some systems you're a little bit more okay with, more of a gunslinger mentality, and you take some of the good with the bad. But I think when you're running what the Cleveland Browns are running, and when you've got the defense the Browns have, their path to winning games is going to be to play mistake-free football. The Browns' record under Kevin Stefanski, when they do not turn the football over, is excellent. I think it's more than 5 wins for every loss throughout his entire time here. So that's a huge key to this operation. It's a huge key to this offense. It's going to be key to success this season. So, yeah, guys that take care of the football and that can operate this offense efficiently, that's going to be the key. Processing, quarterback position is all about a couple of things, right? It's about processing information pre and post snap and then delivering the football on time and accurately. If you can do those things and take care of the football, you can be a Pro Bowler and you can lead a team to the playoffs.
Nathan, I think it's the O-line that's the linchpin of this offense, them being healthy and being able to bounce back to the scheme that I think they had the most success with. But what do you think is the linchpin that can determine whether this offense can bounce back to whether it's 2023 or 2020, whatever the Browns are trying to get back to when they were their most successful?
At the end of the day, it's quarterback play. That's answers 1 through 100 are all quarterback play. Taking that out of the equation, having a good sound offensive line is very, very helpful. I think one of the more underrated things that have happened this offseason is the Browns bringing in offensive line coach Mike Bloomgren. He sees the game, the run game, a lot like Kevin Stefanski, a lot like Bill Callahan, and I think they're speaking the same language and preaching from the same hymn. So I know our offensive linemen are excited about that. I think that is very important. When you have a great ground game and your line's working that way with the schemes that we're able to run, not to say that who is carrying the football is not important, because certainly we've seen how good you are with, Nick Chubb in his heyday. But, Jerome Ford averaged over 5 yards a carry last year, and he had a lot of explosive runs. Dylan Sampson's the SEC Offensive Player of the Year. I don't think a lot of people even know that. He is the reigning SEC Offensive Player of the Year, the running back out of Tennessee they got in the 4th round. Of course, there's Quinshon Judkins, and whenever these off-field issues have been adjudicated and resolved, we'll find out his availability, if at all, for the Cleveland Browns. But if you have that line and you're able to get the run game going, hit some chunks in the run game, keep the quarterback upright, and allow for the explosives in the pass game, yeah, that's very, very important. And I think when you look at when Stefanski's offenses have been really humming, the line has played well. It's been a big reason for the quarterback playing well and for the ground game playing well.
What do you expect out of the tight ends and how they're going to manage not only having just 2 of them, but really the idea that as much as I want Njoku to have a great year, and I expect him to, Harold Fannin was just explosive his final year in college.
I think, and maybe I'm talking myself into this, but I think I kind of view Harold Fannin as helping out, obviously, in the tight end room, but also helping out in the receiving room. I think you're going to see the Browns in a lot of 12 personnel, and I think there are many situations where Harold Fannin, he can be a big slot receiver for you. You can line him up out wide and get some tells from coverage that way. I think he's going to play a big role and be a big kind of chess piece for this offense and for Kevin Stfansky. I think David Njoku is definitely going to have a great season. He's, a Pro Bowl level tight end, one of the best complete tight ends in terms of his abilities as a receiver and as a blocker. I don't think Fannin's going to necessarily cut into his production, but I think Fannin is going to be in some ways, and I talked about this on Browns Daily today, that, one of the big questions is, okay, who's the number 2 receiver? Who's the number 3 receiver? And, if Tillman can stay healthy, he certainly showed promise last year. That 3-game stretch, he was elite, top 5 in the NFL in basically every category. Deontay Johnson's a former Pro Bowler. Maybe some of the young guys at Jamari Thrash step up. But I think Harold Fannin's actually going to kind of count in both of those rooms for the Cleveland Browns. And I like him. I know the coaches like him. They like everything they've seen. He just knows how to get open. He catches the ball. It's a unique look to it, but it is a productive look. And Harold Fannin, I think, is going to be a big part of what the Browns do this year.
Nathan Segura, Browns analyst on the fan hotline.
Sounds familiar about Fannin. You've kind of been saying that all along, right? They're going to need to use him as a weapon in the passing game, as a power slot or whatever, right? And kind of all over the place, right?
Yeah, the only place I could see him eat into Njoku's production potentially is in like some screen game stuff. But
yeah,
I spoke to league sources that say the Browns really want their quarterback to be good and not do dumb stuff. So look forward to that.
They don't want to throw interceptions.
They need a lot to go right, obviously, and I think the Bloomgren element is important. I'll be curious to see how that works, and if you're subscribed to the OBR. Lane Adkins posted some notes as far as some of the stuff that Zagura was talking about with the offensive line coach and some of the other things he was talking about. But yeah, I mean, we'll see with the quarterback stuff. That's going to be a huge element with it. But yeah, this whole avoid mistakes. Yeah, I mean, they want them to avoid mistakes, but they don't. Avoiding mistakes only helps you if you're also making plays. Which is how we sort of ended up with Joe Flacco being lauded as a savior in some ways. That there was the same thing with Jameis Winston. No plays, and largely safe with the ball isn't going to get it done. So you'd rather take some element of playmaking and some risk if that's what it takes. But ultimately, the Browns would love it if they can get a quarterback who makes a ton of plays and makes no mistakes. I'm fairly sure that is the goal with that position. It's just a very weird back and forth to ask Segura, hey, is this what the Browns want? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what they want. So we'll see where we end up.
Keith says, where else would you use Fannin other than the passing game? Well, tight ends block, Keith, as well. So in the run game as well. As always, yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, I don't think he's going to play in line, but I think you can flex him out, play him as a wing, and set up angles for him to, catch linebackers, catch safeties. I could see a scenario where you have him a quick pass to a receiver, or again, Dylan Sampson's the one that jumps out to me, and Fannin can take advantage of his size and take out a DB very quickly that clears out space for Sampson to make plays. And that's where those type of bodies, those type of athletes can really make a big difference for you if they can be effective in space.
As always, we appreciate you tuning into the OBR streaming network. If you're enjoying tonight's programming, make sure you check out theobr.com over at the website itself, especially our VIP premium services. Go subscribe. VIP subscribers get exclusive access to premium forums, including Insider Central for all of our premium scoops from Lane Adkins and our other writers there to answer all your questions. OBR VIP stories and all exclusive recruiting and transfer portal scoops across 24/7 sports become available to you as well. And to top it off, as you renew your membership after the first month, Paramount Plus and Showtime for free. And that's worth it right there. If you like Landman, Mayor of Kingstown, a bunch of good programming on Paramount Plus, as well as if you're a fan of Dexter is back on Showtime. How can you not like Dexter? Dexter Resurrection is back. So right there, it's worth the price of admission. It's a heck of a deal. It supports the OBR and all of the work that we are doing and all the free content that we are providing all the time. So please consider joining at theobr.com. Hit that like button, slap that subscribe button. This is the React. That's Pete Smith. My name is Brad Ward. Continuing on here as we get you ready for training camp tomorrow, I'm going to show this quick video here, and then we'll react to this.
Writing that the Browns have a four-man quarterback competition. I don't believe it. I think Pickett has the chance first. I think they want to see Dylan Gabriel sooner rather than later. I do. Now, where Flacco fits in, I have no idea. And Shedeur is just going to ride the pines. And they obviously don't. They didn't give him a chance against the first team for a reason. I don't think they think Shedeur is ready yet. That's why they didn't let him face the first team, which I think is BS. I wanted to see him. If he's not good enough, then fine. Let's see it. But at least give the kid a chance. Nope. Right now, my top four is Pickett, Gabriel, Flacco, and Sanders. That's how I think the Browns are viewing this.
The
Riz has got to see him.
The most toxic youth sports parent energy on the planet.
Riz has got to see him, Pete. He's got to see him before anybody else.
It's just so. I just envision some form of Rizzo like going to a 7-year-old's baseball game or baseball practice and telling coach, "You're not putting my kid in position to succeed." Like that's the energy I get from that. Yes. The Browns, look, I cannot make this any clearer. Like the Browns don't have a preconceived notion of how they want this thing to go. The only thing you can be very sure of is the Browns would love one of the rookies to seize the job and be great. They don't care. If Shedeur Sanders can do it, if Dylan Gabriel can do it, if random dude off the street, if little Jimmy Rizzo can come off the street as a rookie and get the job done, they will take that because that would change the organization's fate in such a nothing would change the future of this team more than one of those guys establish themselves as a franchise quarterback. Like that is so ridiculous to like they want to see Dylan Gabriel sooner than later. They're not like they can't. They may have like. Is there a bias on some level where they're sitting there thinking we think insert player can do this and it's going to make them successful? Hell yeah! I mean, that's why you trade for Kenny Pickett because obviously Brad Ward wouldn't. They must think he can do something that could be pretty good. They drafted Dylan Gabriel in the 3rd round, so they must think he can do pretty good. But the fact of the matter is they have all 4. So there's no like rooting interest at this point other than get the guy who can step in and make plays and move the offense is the guy they want. And again, the younger quarterback being able to do that is better for the team. But like this idea, this conspiracy against Shedeur Sanders because he wasn't ready to take on the ones in June doesn't matter. Because if Shedeur, the thing I will harp on is Shedeur crushed this last month and G. Bush is right and him throwing on the helmet in the rain makes him a hardened rookie quarterback ready to take on the season. Like the Browns are going to be here for that. They're not going to sit here and go, we didn't like him and we only picked him at the 5th round. We're not going to put him out there. Like it makes no sense. That's why I'm hoping that, we'll see how long they can do this because obviously there is a lifespan. I think the joint practice is sort of the unofficial deadline. I don't think it's going to take that long, but that's the last point where they have to really start making a decision on this thing when they get to that first joint practice of who's going to start getting the starting reps in a meaningful way. But it wouldn't surprise me if like for another week, or so that they're willing to sort of let these guys work, see what the 3 young guys did on their summer vacation, see if there's any meaningful improvement there. Again, there's notes with Lane stuff talking about some of what the Browns thought based on what what some of these guys did with their break. But like there's nothing. Every incentive is for the Browns to get one of these young quarterbacks right. This idea that they're like trying to hold back Shedeur Sanders is silly. It's based on nothing other than Tony Rizzo wants to see him, and they're not doing what he wants, so they must be doing it wrong and stupid and everything else. But yes, toxic youth dad energy in the worst possible way.
Just wait till later. Okay. Couple questions I have for you that were kind of left over for last night. I think we breached this topic once before, but I wanted to hit on it real quickly here before we get to a couple other things. I had said at one point, pending the outcome of the season, that I do think that it's possible that there's like a scenario out there where Stfansky survives and Andrew Berry doesn't. You think they are a package deal no matter what?
Yep.
You don't think that
let's use Quinshon Judkins as an example. Let's say this goes, he's suspended for 4 to 6 games. Who, and I can't confirm this, but just for speculation's sake, who's more likely to want a running back at the top of the second round, the GM or the head coach?
The head coach, probably.
Right. So, like, the immediate reaction is, well, Quinshon Judkins is getting suspended. Well, this means Barry's in trouble. Like, I would bet heavily that Stfansky was super involved in that decision, which is ultimately why I come back to the same point. And I'm not saying that means Stfansky should be fired and Andrew Berry survives. What I'm saying is they are that linked in everything they do that I just don't think there's any meaningful separation. And I don't think the Browns are going to sit there and go, because Kevin Stefanski's involved in these decisions, that they're going to say, well, we just want to give you another GM to make those decisions with. Like, he's already part of the process. So if they don't think it's working, that element is working. I don't think a new voice at GM is necessarily going to change anything. And we know what Jimmy Haslam seems to prefer. He loves the setup. He wants better results, but he loves the setup. He likes the fact that these guys are all on the same page. There's still those contract extensions are significant for both of them. So no, I see no reason. I don't see any separation where he's going to look at Andrew Berry and say, you're the odd man out. I think if he's going to pull the plug, it's on everybody. I don't understand the argument that says we're going to somehow pull these guys apart and assign more blame to one guy than the other.
As much as you want to, assign, Stefanski to the process of drafting or whatever, ultimately Andrew Berry's draft record is going to speak for itself at some point. And
yes.
Yeah. And so if it fails, if it continues to look bad or whatever, and you look around and you're like, man, Stefanski has made the best out of what we've given him. He's a damn good coach. Look at what he did. This. Is there a better coach out there we can go get? No, we can't. I just think there is a world where that's how it could shake out.
Perhaps, but I think it comes back to how collaborative this process is. And I'll throw Jim Schwartz in there. Jim Schwartz is picking the defensive tackle straight up. Like Andrew Berry's not picking Siaki Ika. That was Jim Schwartz saying, "I want this guy."
He cannot be like, "I want this guy," and Andrew Berry like, "Yep, it's your pick." No matter,
No, he has to sign off. Again, Andrew Berry has to own it at the end of the day. He has to own whatever they've done. That's why I've also said that, player misbehavior is ultimately going to catch up with these guys because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
they're winning or losing with them. But that's where I just don't think ownership is going to separate them. I think they see all of this as collaborative. I think they see all of this as one united effort. Yes, Kevin Stefanski has his specified job as head coach. Yes, Andrew Berry has his specified job as GM, but they're so interlocked that I just don't think they're ever going to unmoor from each other. And ultimately, I don't think I would not be shocked if Kevin Stefanski's like, if you're firing Andrew Berry, just fire me. I think that's the other part of this, which may be sort of an under discussed dynamic. That's because there's a world where Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry could go to, like, let's just I'll throw out an example: the Miami Dolphins. They could easily fire Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel this year, and then bring in Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski and roll it from there, because whether we want to acknowledge it or not, every time you sort of look around, whether you hear from national reporters or all this stuff, the common theme that they come back with is these guys are really highly regarded around the league, and the big stumbling block, other than some element of luck, is ownership. And that is sort of the thing that's holding them back. I still put blame on Kevin Stefanski and Watson. I still put Stefanski and Berry on Watson. That they have to own that. But I also don't rule out the possibility that it was Jimmy Haslam that forced them into the contract, which they're still battling with. But yeah, I mean, I just don't.
Outside of the Watson decision, you can't say ownership has held them back, right?
No, actually, they've empowered them quite a bit, and because of their willingness to spend money, it's sort of allowed them more of a leash. But the other element, and again, I think this is unwarranted. But the other 31 teams are going to look at this, look at the Browns, and go, they got the playoffs twice. Nobody else has been anything else other than a dumpster fire since Jimmy Haslam took over, and they're going to perhaps unfairly, in their benefit, that they give them more credit than perhaps they should get. But like, I think there are a whole lot of teams that can talk themselves into the idea of, hey, we're a more stable franchise. We're a better franchise than the Browns. If we give these guys the tools to succeed, they're going to do well.
Yeah, I would put any amount of money that when these guys are part ways, that they both find success in the NFL in the same role someplace else. At some point.
History says GMs are much less likely, unless you're Mike Tannenbaum and you get 6 or 7 jobs for some reason. The GMs have a very difficult time getting a second bite at the apple, where head coaches are more likely to get looks at it. But here again, I do think there's a reasonable chance that if the Browns were to move on from these two, that they would not, and it may not be Andrew Berry at GM, it may be at some other director of pro personnel or assistant GM or whatever the hell else, where they end up in the same organization. I could, for Berry, there's a world where he could go, because this was floated at various points, that Kevin Stefanski, to Jay Crawford's conspiracy theory that Kevin Stefanski's going to end up as the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles at some point, and Andrew Berry's twin brother works there. Like, you could easily see both of them, if you believe in that theory, you could easily see them both end up on the Eagles, or Kevin Stefanski's the offensive coordinator there, and Andrew Berry works there. I think these guys are going to continue to work together, whether it's with the Browns or elsewhere.
MC says, is it possible that AB sucks as a GM, but Kevin is a very good coach? I would say this about no, listen, but like,
people wonder why they get yelled at?
Don't you think that Browns fans have at least some gripe over the drafting?
Yeah, some, to the extent that you got Jedrick Wills and you didn't get Tristan Wirfs, to the extent that you gave away picks.
I think like I think he's a good GM in that he's excellent with cap management. He's made terrific trades. And he understands how to do a roster. Am I sold on his player evaluation yet? No, but I do think we've seen growth. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I think he's gotten better in the draft every year. But like, it's so weird to me how people downplay the success that Andrew Berry's had in the draft. Like, you know, and some of this comes down to weird injuries. Like Cedric Tillman doesn't go out for the year with the concussion, and he just keeps going on the string he was going. Even if let's say he's 75% of success as he was that 3-game stretch for the rest of the year. Nobody's questioning if he's the number 2 receiver. And he was a 3rd-round pick. DeJuan Jones is the heavy favorite to be your starting left tackle. Well, I don't know about heavy favorite. He's certainly in the mix to be the starting left tackle. And if he plays well, he's going to end up putting himself in the line for a contract extension. 4th-round pick. Isaiah McGuire was fantastic last year. 4th-round pick. Like Martin Emerson. And you know, because Martin Emerson sucked this past year, we immediately diminished what he was able to accomplish the year before. We're all sitting there going, oh, man, the Browns got a steal here.
You know, I love Emerson.
Huh?
I love Emerson.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But like, again, another 3rd-round pick. We're all sitting here, you know, a year ago at this time and going, oh my God, Martin Emerson's going to be great. 3rd-round pick. Like Jawan Briggs this past year, 7th-round pick, and a guy I'm very, very excited about to watch this year because I thought he was tremendous down the stretch. If he can carry that over, the Browns have 5 very good or very talented defensive tackles. To then look at what the Browns just did. They trade down from number 2 to get to number 5. They get a 1st-round pick. They get a 1st-round pick, and they get a 2nd-round pick. All offseason, and this is one of the elements that I will hammer home forever. That trade made any talk of trading Myles Garrett look incredibly stupid. Because let's say you got 2 1s for Myles Garrett. 2 1s that were going to be like the 20s. You got more in a trade moving down 3 spots to not take a receiver who hasn't done anything in the NFL, to get the best defensive tackle in the draft. And obviously, Quinshon Judkins, we'll see what happens with him, and another 1st-round pick. And there were people who were clamoring to trade the best, arguably the best player in this franchise's history, at least dating back to 1999, for 2 1st-round picks and say that's a good process. Like, that's
well, they don't
on.
understand the financial ramifications that were there. Like, it was impossible to do that at that point without blowing everything up.
Yes, well, I mean, but let's say we could untether Myles Garrett's whole situation from this, because there's a world where the Browns have 2 1st-round picks from the Myles Garrett trade that they didn't make, another 1st-round pick that belongs to Jacksonville for this coming year, plus their own. They could have recreate, what was it? I think it was 2000 when the Jets had 4 1st-round picks. I would rather have Myles Garrett and the Jags pick and the Browns' own pick with what they got with Quinshon Judkins than 4 1st-round picks. Unquestionably, like, we sit here and we criticize Andrew Berry. He handled that exactly right. And again, I think his draft picks are getting better. Drafts are getting better. The biggest thing for them is they've just got to be able to stay on the field and get some consistency. And not having the biggest crime Andrew Berry ever committed was Deshaun Watson and not having 3 1st-round picks. Like, so this week, or just the other day, yesterday or the day before, the Chiefs announced their extension with George Karlaftis. At the time, before the Browns made that ill-fated trade, Karlaftis was, well, this is sort of an argument I should be a GM, but regardless, I wanted Karlaftis with that pick. He went 20-some picks later, but whatever. He was easily going to be there at 12. And then had the Browns been able to take Brian Thomas Jr., who was absolutely there with the pick last year, that's just 2 of those 1st-round picks. That just would change his franchise immensely compared to what they give up. And you can't credit Andrew Berry from picks he didn't make. You can't sit there and say, well, he would have been good if they didn't have this. But just to show just how big of a hole that blew open on this whole thing is remarkable in terms of just how much you lost. And then the fact that Andrew Berry's sort of been having to piece this thing together in lieu of that, I think he's done an admirable job. I wish it was better. Picks like Siaki Ika drive me nuts. Picks like Buki Watson do nothing for me. These are picks where I look at this and go bad process. But like by and large, 2023 was a great draft from a process standpoint, and it's paying off, thankfully. Hopefully guys will stay healthy and we'll keep going. 2024, I have some questions with some of those picks, but Mike Hall, Juwan Briggs look very talented. And then this past year, nobody's sitting there arguing with Mason Graham. Nobody's sitting there going, Mason Graham's going to stink. Is he going to be Ndamukong Suh? That's going to be a really big hill to climb for him, but still, he should be a very good player. And there are people, there are people who think he's going to be better than Travis Hunter.
There are people that think that, and I'm not sold on that or thrilled with it, but I think the process was correct in gaining the first-round pick because you have to get a quarterback. So every decision has to include that aspect of it, and gaining the first-round pick next year allows you to do that. So I think the process was correct.
I don't understand that. I don't understand this argument that people think Myles Garrett has leverage because he has no trade clause. He has no leverage. He's going to play here forever.
Yeah. I don't get that.
He's going to open up the Brook Park Dome. And I don't understand where people think like he's suddenly going to get out now. The money is still the money. He's going to, the biggest threat that Myles Garrett can pose is that he could retire. He could be Calvin. He could go Calvin Johnson. He could go Barry Sanders and say, I'm walking away. That is his leverage if he chooses to play it. It's on the Browns to make sure he doesn't by building a team around him that's worth sticking around for. But like I've already written on this, Myles Garrett is one of those guys who is going to be around. He's never sustained a major injury, and short of a couple of those, there's no reason to suggest that he's going to be anything but fantastic until he's practically 40 years old. Bruce Smith played 15 years with the Bills and then played 4 more with Washington and finished with 200 sacks. Reggie White played forever. Julius Peppers played forever. These are Khalil Mack this is how you don't do this. This is the ultimate example of what you don't do with one of these guys. Has been traded twice for bad reasons, got bad return, and continued to be great. And now he's going to be 36 or 34, 36, somewhere in that neighborhood. He's going to make $18 million this year and be great. Like it's like the people who want to trade Jose Ramirez. Like, what are you doing? You want to trade away a guy like Myles Garrett, who's going to be, again, he's going to play till he's 36, 37, 38 years old. That's practically a decade more of football. And you're like, yeah, I'm good moving on from it. Like, that argument makes no sense, and you sound like a fool. You sound stupid when you say, I want to give away the best player this team has had because the Browns aren't going to be good right this second. It's not fast enough for me, so I want to tear this thing down and trade away great players. I hope the Browns solve this issue, whether it's Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry or somebody else for Myles Garrett to be able to play meaningful football games. But you are out of your mind if you're going to sit here and I'm going to be upset if Myles Garrett records 175 sacks and they're all with the Browns. And you're going to sit here and go, I didn't enjoy any of that. Like, I wish they would have traded him. Stop it. The return on investment is not – the return on investment for 2 picks in the late 20s for that player was never going to pay off in the way that just Mason Graham trade for a guy who's never played in the NFL. You got more out of that trade. It shows you how stupid it is to trade these type of guys unless you have to.
Yeah, I agree with you there 100%. And I kind of lean towards Will on this. Like, I guess I'm not calling AB. I think AB is a good GM. I wish he would have drafted better. I do think he's getting better, but I do agree that like process over results, it's hard to argue like with this process. Like you have to be able to see through some of that, right? Like that his process has been correct a lot of times, and the results haven't always worked out for him. No?
The Ravens GM, who DaCosta.
Yeah.
DaCosta, the first thing he says talking about the draft is we underplay how much of this is luck. Just getting luck. I've always thought of the draft as poker, in the sense that you're dealt a hand, and you might be dealt a really good hand, like the first pick overall is a really good hand. What you do with it at that point, obviously, you can play the cards you're dealt, but you can still lose because of bad luck or something else. But Jedrick Wills, not a good process. Part of the reason I thought Tristan Wirfs was a deadlock. Great athlete, young, all these things. The only thing that was changing was him flipping sides, which Jed did anyway. That part, I still can't really explain why they went in the direction they did, but it is an illustration that process matters and doing it right. And then there's some element of luck. Like Jordan Elliott was an excellent process pick. Fantastic. His metrics at Missouri were great. He was dominant in terms of his production and his pass rush grades and all these other things. And he just didn't pan out like you would suggest. Tommy Togiai was a good process pick in a lot of ways, other than the fact that he had short arms, but just wasn't. Short arms hurt him. He was stubby, and then it didn't seem like he was an adult when he got here, and is sort of trying to make it work now. You're betting on kids, and that makes it tough on some level, but that doesn't mean that they escape blame by any stretch. But in terms of how I view Andrew Berry, I'm always going to evaluate process. The Deshaun Watson thing was a just complete debacle, and I've said over and over again, if you fired them for that, it's completely justified. But everything else, by and large, has been fine. I'm hoping that it continues to improve and get better. But the same people who say Andrew Berry's terrible would have run Howie Roseman out of town, and now Howie Roseman's the best GM in football, and he has 2 Super Bowls. When he was, pushed into a back room like that dude from Office Space when Chip Kelly was in charge, and then ultimately had to earn his way back into being able to make big time decisions again, and it paid off handsomely for the Eagles. There's going to come a point, and I think 2023 is the best hope for that right this second, where you hit the ball hard a whole bunch of times, and now they're landing where fielders aren't, and hopefully it pays off.
Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. I think the best thing for the organization is both of them. I was just thinking that there's a world where that could end up that way. I don't know. I did want to respond to Drew, who said he made the worst trade of all time. When I said he made good trades, obviously we know that. Obviously we've covered the Watson thing and we know that. But I'm talking about Amari Cooper. I'm talking about Jerry Jeudy. I'm talking about Elijah Moore. I'm talking about trading for Smith. All of which were good trades at the time and helped the team. So, anyways, biggest surprise, Pete, of somebody that won't be on this roster on the 53 that people don't think of.
If you're asking me, somebody who could be off the team, and it's not because he's bad, it's more a case of the direction the team is going, would be Shelby Harris. He's going to be 34.
Yeah.
The Browns have a whole lot of defensive tackles. If Juwan Briggs delivers like they hope, if Mike Hall delivers like they hope, if Mason Graham looks the way he should, if Malik Collins looks the way he should, and they want to keep a guy like Aiden Huntington, and they like his ability to play inside and out, I could see a scenario where the Browns decide to go younger, cut Shelby Harris, unless there's a trade out there for a team he really wants to go to, and they just sort of move on from that. I think that's the type of surprise you could end up with. It'd be somebody who's a little bit older, and the Browns are sort of like, we're going to go in a different direction. We're going to lean into getting younger. And Shelby Harris has been an excellent player for the Browns for the 2 years he's been here. He could easily be on this team again and have another productive season. But he's a guy that sort of stands out as somebody who could, be sort of a surprise cut, even though, basically both sides basically decide that Shelby Harris says, I don't foresee myself playing a ton of reps. I'd like to go sign with a contender. And the Browns are sort of like, well, yeah, we sort of agree. And you just make that change.
That's a good answer. I think that an interesting position that we haven't really, where somebody could end up getting cut. What about a linebacker? They may have one too many good linebackers.
Well, I mean, it would make life a whole lot easier if they could get out of Devin Bush's contract, because that contract was idiotic. They basically gave him $3.25 million immediately, and then he got arrested.
You have Bush.
I'd be very surprised unless Jordan Hicks retires if he's not on this team, because Jim Schwartz trusts him so much.
Right.
And I think Carson Schlesinger is going there. Jim Schwartz is a hard ass in terms of making guys earn his trust. I think that's going to be an ongoing process.
Start at the will, probably.
Most likely. I think that seems. I could see if Mahmoud Diabate really steps up, I could see a world where Jerome Baker becomes expendable. I think that would be sort of the dream outcome for the Browns, is Mahmoud Diabate takes these steps they hope he takes, and then they just go ahead and say, Jerome, we're gonna go in this direction, because Jerome Baker's not old really, but he's just not as young as Mahmoud Diabate, who's like 24.
So going into this, Buki Watson's going to get cut, right?
I think he's going to end up with a practice squad at best. Unless he's like a revelation this year. I didn't his production was great in college. He was super old, not a great athlete. And then I saw basically nothing from him as a rookie. I don't see everything. Maybe they like something he does better than I do. He did play some special teams, but I hated that pick. So, just from that,
a guy like Winston Reed.
Well, Winston Reed is, he's a hammer. They're basically competing for a similar role. But I don't know that either one's really safe. I think one of them will end up on the practice squad.
Okay. Is there a world where Reed could beat out Bush?
Again, that would come down to either something happens legally where the Browns can get out of his contract, or the Browns are just so disgusted, and I don't think this is going to happen, where they're just like, we're willing to eat $3.25 million and move on. I don't think it's going to happen. Far more likely, they cut Winston Reed. I don't see a whole lot of demand for Winston Reed. And they get him on the practice squad. The Browns, with some of these linebackers like Winston Reed, is so specific to some particular job that there's not a whole lot of demand from other teams for a player like that.
What player are you most anxious to watch in training camp?
Most anxious to watch? My guy, Isaiah McGuire, honestly, I want to see if he can take the next step, because, we're criticizing Andrew Berry's drafts. Isaiah McGuire has a chance to be a day 3 guy that becomes a star. Obviously JOK has been Andrew Berry's best pick to this point, was on his way to an all-pro season. And now with his situation up in the air, if he's ever going to come back, or if he doesn't, Isaiah McGuire is immediately his best selection, coming off a tremendous second year. I love this kid's attitude. I loved him since scouting him at Missouri. Very high on him. His metrics are very promising in terms of being able to not just be an excellent run defender, but taking that next step. And I'm very curious to see if he can do it. I'm very curious to know. I like Isaiah McGuire, who I'm sure watches the show. I would love you to reach out and talk to me about your offseason and what you did to sort of, build on what you did, because excellent run defender.
Call us. Pete froze. Pete, you're frozen. But if you're watching, Isaiah, give us a call. You froze.
Tell me about your offseason process. What's the next step for you? Did you go to a private defense, pass rush coach and try to ramp it up that way? If he can build off what he was as a run defender and turn that in, year 3, a lot of guys take to this year, especially if you're a 4th round pick. If he can then take that next step and become a complete player opposite Myles Garrett, the Browns, with all the stuff they've done at defensive tackle, they're going to be cooking.
All right. Who wins the Maurice Bassett Award for Best Rookie in Camp?
Oh, I'll go out on a limb and say Carson Schwessinger does. I think it's going to be I just think it's really hard for a defensive tackle to do it. Carson Schwessinger will get a chance to just fly around and do stuff that sort of draws a lot of praise. And also, I think Carson Schwessinger could be a very good football player. Mason Graham is extremely talented. It's just not everybody can sort of appreciate what those guys are doing.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult to just put the spotlight on him in practice, right? In shorts and whatever. So, what position is most likely to have an outsider make the 53 and fill?
I mean, the easy answer is wide receiver. And I have no idea who the hell that's going to be. But
Javon Baker.
But I could easily, it won't be a Amari Cooper or Jerry Judy like trade, but I could see a scenario where, Andrew Berry flips a late round pick or something for a guy like Javon Baker, who a young receiver on another team who's going to be an odd man out, and the Browns sort of liked him in the draft process, and they want to see if they can get something out of him. To me, that's the easy answer. Or, it could also just be signing a guy off of waivers, but I think that's less likely. I just don't think anybody's going to hit cut down in a way that's going to sort of move the needle for the Browns.
At that position or in total in general? Because I can make
that
an
position.
argument, I think. Yeah, I was going to say I see a world where there's like 3 guys not in this camp that end up on the 53. Possible?
Sure. I mean, let's just use Khalif Halasi as an example. They may just see an undrafted rookie, they like that somebody cuts, and the Browns are like, yeah, we want him, and we're going to carry him on the 53-man roster. I think you could probably pencil in one of those guys happening. It's just a question of what position it's going to be. If it's wide receiver, it's tight end, it's something else. Corner's another one where you see it, or safety. But then, I mean, if somebody unexpected hits the wire, probably on the younger side, I don't think it's going to be an older veteran. And, unless they get like a center hits the market they really like, I could see that being a scenario, maybe, if they're not content with what they've got or they've suffered an injury. But if you were going to ask me over under to set that number, I'd probably say 1.5. But
that's fair. I lean more towards 3, but frozen again. The last question, once you're unfrozen. There, you're unfrozen. I know you think outside of Aiden Huntington.
Mm-hmm.
This is the easy question, I guess. Just Donovan McMillan. Who's the most likely UDFA to make this team? And what's the max? And then I have one more question. I lied. I have one more.
Huntington, McMillan both seem like they're reasonable chances to make this roster. I know the money says one of the corners. I think
Lamarian James.
I think based on the roster, I think it's more likely one of those undrafted receivers.
Yeah. When I had my they asked for our depth chart at wide receiver last night during the fiasco. And I said, I want to hear what you think yours is. And then I have one more question and then we'll get out of here. But I said, Jerry Judy, Cedric Tillman, Deontay Johnson, Jamari Thrash, one of the UDFAs, and somebody not on this roster.
I think that's perfectly reasonable.
Yeah. Last question. At tight end, we've talked about this before. Guys like Noah Fant do anything for you? Are they just taking reps from
No Fant's not bad. The thing that hurts him is he should be a better blocker than he is, and he just hasn't been at this point. But he's actually an okay receiver. The problem is I think he's going to get more money than maybe people expect. I think he's going to end up in a contender in a way that makes more sense for him. And I think it's going to be sort of one of those situations where it's going to be like, oh, of course he signed there.
Yeah. Yep. That makes sense. Is the third tight end on this roster now?
If it is, it might be Blake Whiteheart.
I know. It's Whitebeard. It's
He,
Whitebeard.
Gritty, gutty, coach's kid. He does all those things, and then he just occasionally catches. He's one of those guys where, he always leaves you wanting a little bit more because he doesn't do enough that you get sick of him, or that he's exposed, but he just does just enough where you're sort of like, I enjoyed that. I would like a little bit more.
That'd be a nice UDFA victory.
Tight ends are one of those where because of the how long it takes for them to develop, you might get an undrafted free agent rookie to sort of figure it out.
Anything else that we haven't covered that we should know before camp begins tomorrow, Pete? I know that you wrote an article about being patient at running back.
Yeah, I'm looking at, one, I think the running back options currently suck because anyone really good is either signed or young, and the guys that are out there are largely older. And I think being patient is going to behoove the Browns. And I just picked one team that has way too many running backs, the Denver Broncos. Yeah. They had Jaleel McLaughlin. They had Audric Estime, who for my money was the best running back in that draft class. They signed Blake Watson as an undrafted free agent, I was very intrigued by because of his extreme athleticism, and he's a really good pass catcher despite being small. And then they go into this offseason. All those guys are still there. And then they draft RJ Harvey, and then they sign J.K. Dobbins. That's already 5 guys. So unless they get some weird injury shenanigans with IR and stuff, they're not all making the team. And the Broncos are currently carrying a fullback. They've also got this other undrafted free agent from a couple years ago out of Missouri, I think, still on the team. So they really have 6. But if you're telling me I could have either McLaughlin, I would love Estime, or Watson, I'd be thrilled. But I'm just picking out one team. That's one team. But there are going to be other guys out there. And I think the blocking and everything's way more important. I think the Browns scouting in terms of understanding what guys can and can't do is going to allow plug and play. You don't need them to be a hero. You just need to be able to contribute in a specific way.
Yeah, but between the tackles, right? I mean, listen, I was looking at, cut candidates today to see if anybody jumped off the page, and I think Chicago might have a couple too. I mean, you just picked out one team, but to your point, there's probably a guy you can find on a lot of teams that has a chance to get cut. Like, what if Khalil Herbert gets cut? Are you interested in that?
I mean, he did nothing for the Bengals. They traded pick for him.
I mean, I think it's better than Gus Bus out of free agency. I think waiting it out is better.
Gus Edwards is just not a good fit for what the Browns want to do. He's a downhill power guy. That is what Foreman was supposed to be for the Browns when they were trying to do that type of stuff. Yeah. He was bad, but then the Browns are going back to a different system that doesn't really favor what those guys are going to do.
What about Dearness Johnson?
I mean, if he's not too busy on his fishing boat, I mean, he at least understands the system they want to run. So, I mean, I don't hate it. I just think there's going to be better options.
Yeah, I think there will be too, but it's intriguing considering he ran well in this offense. But
True.
Yeah. All right, Pete, parting words before we get out of here. It's the eve of training camp 2025 here at the OBR. If Garage Beers is up next in just minutes. So we ran over. My bad, Mike. Actually, it's 9 right now, so we got to get out of here. But any parting words, Pete?
Check out the subscribe to the OBR. Check out the latest notes to get everything you're ready for camp. There's plenty of good nuggets in there for that stuff. And then check out Garage Beers. I didn't see who their guest is, but I'm sure it's somebody good.
It's a fantastic guest. I can't think of it right now, but they have the best guest, and you know it. Grab a beer, go to the garage. Garage Beers is next. Thank you for watching on the OBR streaming network and contributing. Despite, even if I recognize it or not, I saw all of your chat comments, even the infuriating ones. I saw every single one. I appreciate y'all for being here. Hit like and subscribe on your way out. For Pete Smith, my name is Brad Ward. Have a wonderful evening. Enjoy Garage Beers now.